Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
Good afternoon, Americans, and welcome to the Jeff Santos Show. We are live in Studio A on the campus of Emerson College. It is great to be with you today on this 30th of August, 2016. Got a great show for you today. I'm going to be taking a lot of your calls at 772-925-8206. Two of our great contributors will be with us for the majority of the hour. And 4 o'clock, Mark Taylor-Canfield will join us via Skype at 4:15 Eastern Time. And at 5:06, Robert Craig will join us from, of course, Wisconsin Citizen Action. He's the executive director there. We'll get into a number of issues, the economics of Wisconsin and what Governor Walker is doing will be a big part of the Robert Craig discussion. We'll get into a whole slew of issues with Mark Taylor-Canfield, a great independent journalist from the great Pacific Northwest, and I wish most of America would understand the politics that people in British Columbia and Washington State and Oregon get, if you want to call it the Cascadia, as many people do. That is, I think, the most progressive part of America. We saw how Bernie Sanders just romped Hillary Clinton in that part of the country. And you can include maybe the Bay Area and parts of Vermont as well into that. But we need to focus on some of the issues that even in liberal Seattle are really hurting this country. We've talked a lot about police brutality. We'll get into the Colin Kaepernick issue with Mark Taylor-Canfield and his stance on not standing up for the national anthem and his critique of what is happening to his fellow man. And then in the case of his African-American 20-somethings like himself, not an easy place to be in streets of America with police officers that have gunned down armed and unarmed black men and beating them up for years. And I'm glad that Mr. Kaepernick has spoken up. We've made it clear before, we'll make it clear again. Not every white police officer or black police officer is a problem. But there are institutional racism involved in a lot of police forces in this country. There are elements of Aryan Nation, KKK, white supremacies in police departments. And we need to change that. And we'll get into the militarization of the police forces. Apparently, Seattle... the city of Seattle has spent quite a bit of money to put together a new police station. And in the meantime, teachers are being laid off and you're not getting the proper education to all the citizens of Washington State, as an example. So all that we'll touch with Mr. Mark Taylor-Canfield. You can catch him, of course, at Daily Kos. Again, we're going to be focusing and we're narrowing down the time, either 4 or 4:30 with Elizabeth Warren on Thursday. We'll know more about that in the next 24 hours. Rand Wilson, a labor leader for Bernie Sanders, will be with us in studio tomorrow at 4 p.m. And Elaine Clayton will continue her weekly appearances here on the Jeff Santos Show. It's the Jeff Santos Show. Don't go anywhere.
From the palatial studios at Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston, this is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America, together, investing, activism, and supporting the middle class. Now, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Shane, and good afternoon, Americans, and welcome to the Jeff Santos Show. We are live in Studio A on the campus of Emerson College. Great to be with you today on this 30th of August, 2016. We'll be talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield at about 4:15 today, coming right up. After a little commentary by yours truly, we'll also talk with Robert Craig in the entire hour of 5 o'clock. Take your phone calls, 772-925-8206. Your emails, Jeff with a J at revolutionboston.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. We'll be tweeting later tonight as well on a number of issues. We're going to get into a number of economic issues this week. As I said yesterday, I'm back from vacation. Elizabeth Warren looking more and more like Thursday at 4 or 4:30 p.m. We'll know more tomorrow. Elaine Cleaton, our great associate professor of sociology from SUNY New York at Geneseo, will join us Fridays now, excuse me, on a regular basis at 4:30. And tomorrow we'll talk with Labor leader for Bernie Sanders, Rand Wilson, who's part now of the Our Revolution. And we'll get into that in a couple of minutes on my thoughts on Bernie Sanders and where the Our Revolution is going. But tomorrow we'll have Rand Wilson here in studio with us. But today, if you may notice, for those watching on MNN, Time Warner Cable, Channel 34, Verizon 33, RCN 42, or on Free Speech TV's website, wearing my U2 shirt. And this, of course, one of the more famous songs that the band wrote. And it's kind of fitting for today's commentary. Look, as many of you know, I'm a progressive. Been a long time progressive, going back to my days in college for Gary Hart, and hoping that a progressive would rule the day in the White House. Thought Barack Obama would be that guy. And obviously, like a lot of you who listen and watch this show, I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders. But I must say, I have been frustrated with the process of the transition of Bernie Sanders, and I'm interested to hear what Mr. Wilson has to say tomorrow. But, and I'm not the only host that had this situation, but Bernie Sanders would have never appeared on my show during the campaign. I had a 2-minute interview with him when he was in New Hampshire. Now, I don't want anybody to feel bad for me, because I know other hosts had a similar experience. But my concern is not so much that he didn't come on my show, but my show is just another outlet for him to get his message across. And I hope that the progressive movement doesn't keep a status quo. It has to be able to reach out to a lot more audiences, not only mine or any other talk show that you may listen to on some of these stations that we're on. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for when it comes to the progressive movement reaching out to some conservatives. We have a listener who I would describe as very conservative, Brian from Florida. And I think that as an independent, as he talks about, that progressives and the Democratic Party need to reach out to him and find a way in which progressive politics makes a difference to people. And whether that's infrastructure, Wall Street, single-payer health care, 4 years of free university, whatever it is that gets people over. Or maybe it's utilizing more Hollywood. I know that Mark Ruffalo and Miss Silverman and others were out there for Bernie, and of course the great actress Susan Sarandon, but there needs to be more. Rosario Dawson and so forth. And I'm hoping that whether it's Elizabeth Warren, again, we'll hopefully talk to her on Thursday, it is important that our progressive leaders don't just stay in Washington and make the sausage. That's important, of course. But they have to become, in my view, and I want to hear from you at 772-925-8206, have to be able to reach out and get people not who are politically involved right now, but some people who have never voted before. And Sanders did a lot of that with college students, and he went on every college campus, it seems, in the country. And that's important, and that's an important place. But there's still a lot of other places. And I don't have all the answers. Again, I would enlist more Colin Kaepernicks, and I would talk to the Players Association, the Players Union, and all four major sports teams. And the celebrity that is in music today, I think that there has to be a bigger push. It has to be an understanding that if we're going to move this country in the direction that I believe Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and other progressives in this country want to see it go, and millions of people who voted for Bernie, some 13, 14 million folks, we need to see a bigger and wider push. We can't afford to just, continue to keep talking to each other. Now, I'm not one that loves talking to Republicans or conservatives. I want to define them differently. But over the coming weeks, I'm going to invite some people to come on that normally wouldn't be heard on progressive talk radio, just to see if any of them have any kind of understanding of where the country needs to go. Or are they all just bought off? Or are they all just Neanderthals? Because I want to be able to get a message that I believe that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and many people who came before them, going back to FDR and Truman and JFK and LBJ before Vietnam, have basically laid the foundation for. I saw Michael Moore last night on Late Night with Seth Meyers, and he was talking about the fact, and Seth Meyers brought it up, that a lot of the issues that Michael Moore was talking about 10 years ago, Bernie Sanders ran on. There are a lot of us out there that have been talking about certain issues like this for a while, and Bernie has been talking about it. He just never had the platform. The presidency, running for president, obviously gave him a platform, and when people got a chance to hear him, well, they pretty much were excited about it. And I think that we need to do more. And it just shouldn't revolve and wait around Bernie Sanders, as he has said many times himself. It's not just about him. And, we've had a lot of his surrogates. Nina Turner has been both a friend and a great guest to the show. And I'm hoping that she, really has an opportunity, and whether the Democratic Party will kind of scold her for her outspokenness, and rightfully so, in support of Bernie Sanders, I'm not sure. But I really believe that people like Nina and others who have endorsed Miss Ellison, Mr. Ellison from Illinois, of course, and others, need to get their voice out there. I've talked on this show about Gavin Newsom, the California governor. These are all people that, in my view, need to have a voice. And I hope they run for offices, that they will have a voice and start the revolution and practically speaking, make the revolution whole by instituting some of the ideas. Gavin Newsom can do two of them. Single-payer health care, which he passed in San Francisco as the former mayor there. And, of course, 4 years of free university. California did it back in the 1960s with the current governor's father, Pat Brown. So this is not pie in the sky. This is not radical. This is not the first time that the world has seen this. Most of Europe does these things. So I hope this lights a fire under a lot of people to get going. And there's nobody better to talk about all of this with a progressive voice from the Pacific Northwest He is an independent writer. You can catch his work at Daily Kos and a number of other sites. It is always great to have our good friend and contributor, Mr. Mark Taylor-Canfield, with us live from Seattle as we have a little Pearl Jam in the background for MTC. Mark, happy Tuesday, sir. Great to have you back.
Hey, Jeff. It's good to hear you on the air, too. And I wanted to let you know that I did speak and perform at the world's largest cannabis festival in Seattle, the Seattle Hemp Fest, at a time when the Department of Justice review decided to keep it as a Schedule I drug. Folks in Seattle were celebrating it by about 100,000 people. And I did get a chance to speak with poet and author George Martirano, who spent 33 years in prison on a nonviolent marijuana charge. So That's the kind of stuff we've been dealing with. And then also Rock Against the TPP was in town with Jello Biafra and Tom Morello. They're out there touring around the country talking about this trade agreement and how undemocratic and damaging it will be for the planet. So that was a good thing to see, too. So Seattle has had some really great events here in the summer, and we're really enjoying the music. It's been great.
Well, it's a great music scene, and obviously, you guys have helped, make a new music scene out of the early 90s with the grunge movement and everything that has come since, and obviously you yourself are in it too. So it is, I hope we can learn. I hope we can learn politically from what Washington State and Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, many people call Cascadia if you include the province of British Columbia as well. I want to get to an issue, though, and start us off because Seattle is such a progressive community. And I talked earlier in the commentary that America should really follow the state of Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia, if you want to include them. And I was disappointed to read about the amount of money that went into the new police station in Seattle. Now, we're talking about the issue of militarization. We talk about the issue of police brutality. This has all been connected to this law and order candidacy of Mr. Trump. But I really think that it's going to take leaders in progressive parts of America, like Seattle, to say no to more militarization. Now, maybe they're just going to have a bunch of bell and whistles in this new police department, but in the technology, and hopefully it's not to spy on people. But I really hope that they actually work in the community and hire police officers who are trained. Maybe they learn different languages. Maybe they have an understanding of how to negotiate, of how to reduce and the tensions that are in the community, hire more people of color, etc. But from what I understand, it is not a good thing that the amount of money that is being spent there could be used for education. As an example, we all know about the way the funding goes in the state of Washington. Give us the latest on that, Mark.
Well, it's been a huge controversy in the city, and I don't even know where to begin. But on the same day that U.S. federal court judge James Robart in Seattle endorsed the Black Lives Matter movement and said that he would not allow the Police Officers Guild to hold him and the city hostage during their present contract negotiations with the city. He even said that he thought that the population of Seattle would follow him in a march on this issue. So I don't know if Judge Robarts is planning to lead a protest march, but he seems at least rhetorically willing. And during a city council meeting just a few weeks ago, Black Lives Matters activists, members of the Alternative Socialist Party, the Green Party, and other folks from the community pushed their way into a city council meeting, which was quite contentious, most expensive police station in the country. So at a time when the Washington State Supreme Court is suing our state legislature $100,000 a day for violating our own state constitution by not adequately funding K through 12 public education, and at a time when the city of Seattle and the Martin Luther King Jr. County have declared a civil emergency due to homelessness, the city council looks like they want to go ahead and spent $149 million on a new police station, which has really caused a lot of problems in the community. I did want to mention also, Jeff, that I did write an article for a National Lawyers Guild review of militarization of police in the United States. And at that time, what I was writing about was the Seattle model for crowd control with all the sort of RoboCop and projectile weapon type devices and the armored car that they used during the World Trade Organization protests. So unfortunately, not only has Seattle become a model for law enforcement at major protests across the country, it's also been under a Department of Justice review, which found a practice and policy of the use of excessive force and racial profiling. So in the middle of that kind of atmosphere, to, set aside that much money for a police station is considered highly questionable by a lot of folks in the community.
Talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. We know we have a bunch of lines lit up here, so we'll get to your calls coming up here shortly. Mark will be with us to the top of the hour. Mark, I led off the commentary today, and I want to get your thoughts here on this. And the fact that and we played the song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, by my favorite band, U2. In terms of the progressive movement, and I know you have written in your thoughts about Bernie Sanders and what he and this new Our Revolution should do and what they haven't done. I'm concerned, though, that it needs to be able to reach out and continue to reach out to a lot of the people that were at Safeco Stadium, several months ago when the primaries were going on. I think it was back in March. The fact that, we don't see enough progressive views out there. I think the media obviously has a responsibility, but we're in the middle of a race between, two people, and it's personality driven and it's scandal driven and so forth. And that's what it is. I want to get your thoughts here, because I think a lot of people, and obviously we have a lot of people on hold that want to talk to you, that I think get your thoughts and are really frustrated. They are Sanders supporters, and they sense that something is potentially being lost here. What's your overall thoughts here on this?
Well, it's been a roller coaster ride for a lot of folks who supported progressive causes this year. The excitement and enthusiasm and this amazing recruitment of new people into the Democratic Party really lit a fire in the country. Just as the introduction to Bernie Sanders' live stream for his Our Revolution address mentioned, it did light a fire in the country. And I've witnessed that over at Daily Kos, where I write, where it was just an amazing debate going on that website over progressive issues, something that would not have happened, I believe, if Bernie Sanders weren't in the campaign. And so you have a lot of people who put their trust and their money and their time into supporting Bernie Sanders' campaign, which I also wanted to mention once again, I think goes beyond progressive politics and is actually what I would call a pro-democracy movement, because it really was about expanding the franchise there. Well, a lot of those people are disappointed now because they think that the corporate wing of the Democratic Party is what's running things and what's going to be running things in Washington, D.C. if Hillary Clinton is elected. So they are feeling a little bit disillusioned and not sure where to go. It's also happening in media, and as we talked off the air, politics do affect American media, and U.S. media does affect politics. It's a two-way street there, and we're going through another period where people are choosing sides, and they're choosing their audiences. Some of my longtime mentors and people in the media have decided to be pretty critical of Bernie Sanders along the way, and so have lost some of their support. And I've seen that happen all over the country. But bottom line, progressive media is really struggling right now. They're struggling for funding. They're struggling for sponsorship. And a lot of those of us who tend to cover these kinds of issues are finding ourselves going through another period where there are purges going on and people losing their shows, and it's a really difficult time. So we're all struggling to try to reach out to the public and let them know that if you want to hear independent progressive media in this country, you have got to go out there and support it. You have got to support the people who are telling the truth, and you've got to be there for them when they need you. That's happening all across the country right now. It's happening with Democracy Watch News, which is a organization that I work with. We have press briefings every Thursday and an amazing podcast, but struggling for funding is what everyone is going through right now. So I'm watching another change in the media, Jeff. I'm seeing it on a daily basis.
All right, I want to get to a quick call here before we go to break, and we'll hold over Mark in Sacramento. Your first here on the Jeff Santos Show with Mark Taylor-Canfield. Go right ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is David.
David, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I called you Mark. How you doing, David? What's up?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. My point is going to the Kaepernick issue, and also my point is the reason why there's a lot of people who are basically, being, there's no jobs, there's going to be more crime. If you give everybody a job or a paycheck to get, there's going to be less crime. Doesn't anybody know that by throwing them in jail does not help the situation, doesn't even help the cause? It gets even more worse because people are incarcerated, that they can't get a job after they get out of incarceration.
You're right there. Stay with us, David. I want to have Mark's thoughts on this. We'll come right back, take your calls. It's the Jeff Santos Show. Back in a flash.
The United States of America is the most powerful nation in the world. Yet, the way in which we treat many of our citizens is a shameful display of our power.
For hundreds of years, African Americans and their allies stood up and fought back against racism, segregation, and bigotry.
We have been woke from the dream, the beautiful dream, of having our first black president, only to find ourselves entering into a new era of mass incarceration and police brutality that we call the new Jim Crow.
People like Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, and my father, Eric Garner, and the list goes on and on.
This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community.
Todos sabemos que el sistema no está funcionando en este país. No está funcionando para ninguno de nosotros.
And the money that's made from the rigged economy is paying for the political campaigns. And they say they're going to fix things. Wake up, America. How are they going to fix a broken system when they are profiting from a broken system?
What this campaign is about is telling Wall Street and the billionaire class they cannot, they will not have it all. We want a government that represents all of us, not wealthy campaign contributors.
Since the recession of 2008, we have seen the erosion of the black middle class get worse. We've not just lost our jobs, but we've lost the homes that we worked so hard to build. So whether it's the fight for $15 an hour or for affordable housing, the policies that the next president enacts will either set us on a course towards poverty or prosperity.
People should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to get by, and then after all of that, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. That's wrong.
We live in the greatest country in the world, and yet so many of our citizens can't get an education. And if they do, they end up paying their student loans for the rest of their lives. Education is a right, not a privilege.
Instead of schools, they build prisons for profits and fill them to the brim with more people than any other society in history. We must disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline, reform our criminal justice system. The time is now.
I'm from Scotland, right? It's not a particularly rich country. It's not nearly as wealthy as the United States of America, for example. Yet, everyone has access to free education and healthcare. Why do we have that in America?
We should not be punishing people for getting an education. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires or fighting wars we should not be fighting, we're going to be investing in housing and education and healthcare.
This election is not a popularity contest. It's not about who you like or who you want to go have a beer with. It's about our future. It's about our children.
What this campaign is about is creating a political revolution.
From Strong Island to Staten Island, Queens to the Boogie Down, BK, Manhattan. We need you, New Yorkers. Don't be just liking this online. You got to get in line. It's time to vote, show up, represent.
At this crucial moment in American history, we need my brother Bernie because he's a man of integrity, honesty, dignity, and courage. And he's got a vision that focuses on everyday people.
Real change takes place when millions of people look around them.
Our phone lines are jammed, and we're going to try to get every one of you in here over the next couple of minutes. We'll continue this conversation with Robert Craig as well and get his thoughts, too, on a number of the issues of the day. But I want to get back to David in Sacramento to finish your thoughts, David, on both Kaepernick and some of the issues, the economic issues that this country's facing. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead, sir.
Okay, so, going back to the issue that, over here in California, we're creating about 5,000 more jobs by the next year or so in Sacramento County. But the thing about it, like I'm saying, is that the government in Chicago or any other states that are basically low income and whatnot, there's a lot of places in California that's low income as well, but, they got to create more jobs. And when you're incarcerated and when you go to jail, it's harder for you to get into the jail because you can't expunge those criminal background from these corporations who basically won't hire you because you got some kind of liability, on your record. And that just makes people more ticked off in Chicago or African Americans and so forth. It gets them really mad that you're throwing them in jail, creating a criminal background, and then when they get out of jail, they can't get a job. You're getting them more ticked off. What you should be doing is creating jobs, so that way they're less ticked off in the police department and so forth, so that way they can pay into the system and basically pay more taxes instead of worrying about your job. And that's what I don't get, and that's what ticks me off about. I can understand why Kaepernick says what he does say, because a lot of times when he says what he says, he has the right to stand up. And I don't want to hear people calling in and say, hey, well, if you don't like it, you need to go to Canada, all this same
That's
old,
all crap.
jargon.
I agree with you. I think you're exactly right. And when I saw this 49er fan burn his jersey, I'm thinking, really? That's what you have to spend your time with, to go out and get a jersey or buy one or whatever the case is. Maybe you had one in the closet and to burn it. I mean, really, the guy decided to speak up on an issue that we need more. And again, this goes to my earlier point. We need to have Bernie Sanders. We need to have Elizabeth Warren. We need to have other progressive leaders, Jesse Jackson, etc., say, look, what Mr. Kaepernick is saying is really important. We should have other athletes talking about this. Back in the 60s, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Bill Russell all came together over the issue of Vietnam. They didn't have to, but they did. And civil rights, obviously, the undertone of that, too. Mark, I want to get your thoughts here, because this is exactly where I think the progressive movement they can't be afraid of this issue. The right-wingers are going to come out. We've already heard Trump, Kurt Schilling, the right-wing lunatic that it wants to run for Senate here against Elizabeth Warren, the Red Sox pitcher, who I love the fact that he helped the Red Sox end their drought after 75 years or whatever it was. But the fact is that this guy doesn't have much to say, doesn't have much background on issues. And, he's going after a fellow athlete. Your thoughts, Mark?
Well, first of all, normally Mr. Kaepernick is a major rival for us here in Seattle.
That's right.
Because Russell
Wilson
and Colin Kaepernick go at it every year for the for the conference championship. So there's a big rivalry here, but I think you're probably going to find a lot of Seahawks athletes siding with Mr. Kaepernick. The Seahawks players tend to be a little bit outspoken to begin with, if you consider folks like Richard Sherman. So I think that the backlash against him is actually only helping to highlight the issue. So kudos to Mr. Kaepernick. The San Francisco Police Officers Association is demanding an apology now. But I think he's going to stand his ground on this issue. And really, if it takes an NFL quarterback to bring up this subject and get people thinking about it, then let's do it. Look, bottom line, if the only way that I could think of, I mean, you might disagree with tactics, but the only way that you can actually say that you're opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement is if you support the killing of black men by police. And who is going to come out and say that? Right. So where's the moral high ground there? And I think the right-wing backlash against this is going to self-destruct at some point, because once people push them to that line, that's a very clear line, and involves issues of racism and police brutality. And just, do people feel safe around the police department? Now, some of the folks that were testifying before the city council in Seattle were saying that they are afraid to call the police department, especially if they're people of color, because they're afraid. They think that the police, some of the members at least of the police department, could be racist and dangerous. And so that's a shame. This is a real crisis of confidence, in our own police department here in Seattle. And to address Dave's comments about the economy, well, in Seattle we have a peculiar issue where there are plenty of jobs, but only if you're a software technician, a biomed technician, a professional, a lawyer, doctor, attorney. But the rest of the folks are really struggling, and the $15 an hour minimum wage is being phased in, but the rents are tripling. So it's not keeping up with that. So that's our problem here. And so I think in Seattle what's happening is that people are being criminalized because they're poor.
Yeah. Well, the economy and the economic issues are exactly that. David, great point. And I tell you, it's really important that people like yourself get engaged in the community. And let me ask you this too, David. Would you like to see, some of the political leaders, again, and I don't want to pick on Bernie Sanders, but, progressive leaders come to the defense of Colin Kaepernick? Because if you can connect those dots, it's a stronger message. What you feel about that?
I don't like to say, I don't disagree what he was saying. Is that I don't disagree what he was saying. My point, that he does make, is that I'm all for what Kaepernick did. I'm all for what he did as far as standing up concerned. It's going to be interesting if there's other players in the football leagues who are going to stand up with him as well. That would be interesting if any other person, because then that would basically back up his cause. Otherwise, if it doesn't back up his cause, when other people don't stand up in the NFL, other players don't, then what's going to happen is he's basically going to be doing this for publicity. But as far as I'm concerned, remember, he's got an $11 million contract, which is guaranteed. So if anything happens to kicking him out, or he becomes a distraction, or lose any kind of endorsements, which he will not, what's going to happen is that's a breach of contract.
If he throws, 6 or 7 interceptions in the first 2 games, he may not necessarily have a starting job, and therefore an endorsement deal. Because, as we all know, corporate companies don't like to have controversy associated with their products. So, but
remember that he does have an $11 million guaranteed contract already. That he already got that $11 million, unless some other football is going to go ahead and pick him up, and continue his contract. But he does have his $11 million contract guaranteed if they kick him out of 49ers. So we already know that for a fact. As far as I'm concerned, I don't stand up for the national anthem because, why should I? I think to me, it's disgraceful with the country that we're going in right now, because you got people that are homeless. You got people that are gay people been fighting for gay marriage for the last 50 years. You got African-American people, being called the N-word, and then you want me to go ahead to stand up for that, what the country that is going through? Really? And, there's not even one person who's out there. I mean, I feed the homeless. When a person who's homeless is hungry, I even sit down with the homeless in a restaurant just to pay for his food. How many people are going to do that and pay for some homeless person and sit with them and eat with them? Those are the people that are hypocrites that don't like what Kaepernick has to say. So that's my point.
No, great one, Mark, David, and thank you very much for the call.
Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner originally as a poem. He was celebrating the fact that ex-slaves were being killed because the British said, we're going to take these slaves and free them. So come fight with us against the Americans. Now, if you're a slave, what are you going to do? You're going to stick with the Americans, or you're going to take the British deal? I think you're going to take the British deal. Yeah. So Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner celebrating the murder of those men who were trying to free themselves from American slavery, because the British were going to free them. So people need to know the history. Right. They were called the Colonial Marines. These are these black ex-slaves who were fighting with the British. So people need to know the history of something before they condemn it. And even after the United States and Britain signed the peace treaty in 1814, there were still 6,000 ex-slaves. So the United States wanted those slaves back. The British refused. So most of those slaves went to Canada, and some of them went to Trinidad down in the Caribbean. So that's the truth about the Star Spangled Banner. I myself would never stand again for it since I found out the truth about it, which I didn't know myself.
Fascinating. And that's something I did not know. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people want the national anthem of America removed and have it connected to either God Bless America or America the Beautiful. And that may, people may look into this as we go forward here. A lot of people are very sensitive, and they've connected this to the military, Mark. But to me, it has nothing to do with the military. The right wing wants to use that as a wedge issue. But he's not saying that people who fought for this country are bad. He didn't come out, did Kaepernick, and say anything negative about anything, with the exception of the brutality by police departments, which is pretty obvious, as you just said a few minutes ago, Mark.
I think people are just trying to tell the truth, just like our caller just did. That's all. And, you can take offense to it, but if you can't handle the truth, then I don't know what you're going to do. You can stick your head under a rock and pretend that it doesn't exist. It's a very patriotic thing to criticize your country. And as far as the slave trade is concerned, yes, Britain abolished slavery before the United States. And it's also a little-known part of American or North American history is that the United States has invaded Canada several times.
Right.
So, although we tend to have a great relationship with them at the moment, in the past it was not necessarily so. So,
always the aggressor, the American government. Thank you very much, Wayne. Great call and great ideas. Thanks, all right, let's continue. Let's stay with Chicago and talk to Rudy in Riverside, Illinois. Rudy, you're next. Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Jeff, you may get some complaints from the Neanderthals comparing them to the Republicans.
I think I might. Yes, I think I might.
Now, I called about the EpiPen situation.
Right.
Saw some honest news reporting on the NBC Evening News about that yesterday. It seems that they've lowered their price down to $300 from $600, claiming it's now a generic available. And the response from that was, too little, too late. Bring it back down to the original price of $100. Now, that drug cost $2 to make, and they didn't develop it. That drug was around since the 19th century, and the Defense Department developed the injectable syringe that you apply that medicine with. And I remember watching before the invasion of Iraq, they were worried about Saddam's using gas, and they showed one of our soldiers showing how that injectable syringe works. So they are getting windfall profits over something that's already been developed. The National Institutes of Health research drugs and develop them up to 80%. They give it to the drug company. They do the other 20%. They put it to market, and then they make windfall profits. What had to happen in this country is a drug that is a matter of life and death, they ought to make it free.
I agree.
Because our tax money goes to the National Institutes of Health to develop these drugs. I'd like to ask Mark a question. Has there been anything about EpiPen from the people where you are in Seattle? And the other thing about the media, the progressive media, we don't have a progressive president, but don't you think he'd be a little concerned about the real truth getting out and somehow support progressive stations that need financial help like PBS? So, but there was a caller that got called in a Chicago progressive station and said he's told his druggist, I want no drugs made by Mylan. I want an alternate company. That's consumerism.
Yeah, that's great.
He's boycotting Mylan, and I don't know how many other people might be doing that, but that's the most effective way to get through all this.
I know you said that before, Rudy. Mark, your thoughts on what Rudy had to say. Some good points, Rudy. Mark?
Yeah, Rudy, good to hear from you. The cover of the Seattle Times was the increase in the EpiPen. So, yeah, it has been a big issue around here. This is a big medical tech area as well as a computer and high-tech software area. So, the University of Washington has a world-famous medical center, and there's a lot of talk about that here. As far as progressive media is concerned, I would point out that there's been a long struggle with the Federal Communications Commission as well, especially under Colin Powell's brother, Michael Powell, where the Republicans on that commission were all for not only encouraging corporate media ownership consolidation, resulting in less minority ownership, female ownership, but they also, due to an investigative news report I did, ended up denying and repressing their own research showing some of the negative effects of corporate media ownership. So I think if you follow the money, as Woodward and Bernstein said, you'll find that the bias in the media is oftentimes connected with where the money is coming from. So you have major corporations owning most of the media in the United States, and you've got folks like Clear Channel, who bought up 880 radio stations at one point, and Cumulus bought up 330. So these are media monopolies, and if they have a certain party line, then that's going to be reflected in most of the media you hear. Right now, there is a lack of progressive media everywhere in the country, including the Northwest, which is one of the most progressive parts of the country. But there just is no major AM or FM stations here for progressive talk radio, and it's really a shame. They shut down TPK in Seattle and turned it into a sports station, and that was CBS. And then in Portland, Clear Channel got rid of their progressive station as well. So the only media here is either national progressive media or independent people who are not a part of a major corporate network.
Yeah. Rudy, thank you for the call. John in Minneapolis, you can stay with us for the next hour with Robert Craig. Mark, thank you so much, my friend. Great 45 minutes. We're going to do this again next Tuesday. Give you more time. Thanks so much, my man. All right, folks, for those in New York and FSTV, go to jeffsantoshow.com. We'll continue this conversation over the next hour. You're tuned into the Jeff Santos Show. You can always catch us around the clock at jeffsantoshow.com. We'll be right back after this timeout.